See? All right, let me know if you can hear that. Let's see here. I'm gonna try and get the chat set up. New configuration here. So just making sure that everything is working properly. Have some new views, some new angles, and some new gear that we're gonna talk about today. So welcome everybody. Welcome back to another fun Sunday live stream from the studio. Chat, see how it goes. Yeah, sorry, I'm going to be bouncing back and forth a little bit, trying to get stuff arranged a little bit better here. Let me try to bring this over so I can see the chat. That should be better. Put that over there for the views. Okay. I'm gonna put this up there. Hopefully that doesn't mess up my sound at all, but we'll see. And yeah, welcome everybody. Welcome to the chat. Hey, from Prague, Czech Republic. Awesome. Welcome. Looks like it's Andre, if I'm not incorrect there. Welcome. Yeah, so what we're going to do today is chat a little bit about the redesign of the setup here, which I can show you overhead view so you can see. Some looks the same. You'll notice that there's a new piece of gear right here, the Digitone 2, and that's something that we're going to be chatting about today. Make sure I can get that in there. Just got that yesterday. Thanks to the folks at Zounds for sending that over to me for a test run, and I'll let you know what I think about it. That's what we're going to be talking about today. What I think so far about the Digitone 2, and what I like about it, what I've discovered with it. Yeah, all of that stuff. And we'll be going through a little bit about the live setup, how I may or may not use it in the live setup, kind of depending on how things go with the trial run that we have here. Hello, hello. Yeah, if you're just tuning in, feel free to pop into the chat and put where you're coming from, where you're viewing from. Always like to see that. And if you have any questions about anything, so the gear that we're talking about, anything that I'm doing, live setups, performance, my courses, anything like that, feel free to pop those into the chat, and I'll do my best to answer all the questions as we go along today. And yeah, let's see. James, what's going on? Speaking of the course, James is an alumni of my course. So yeah, if you have any questions, definitely pop those in there. Reykjavik, awesome. So we have Iceland, Czech Republic. James, I believe, is in Seattle. And Saraunian, I'm not sure where you're from. So go ahead and pop that in there if you'd like to. And yeah, we'll go through stuff. Let me know how the sound is as well in there. Olympia, Washington. Hey, Wesley, what's going on? Another student from one of my courses, which just to let you know, if you're interested in any of my online courses, there's a huge sale going on right now for Black Friday. We're doing kind of a countdown to Black Friday. So any of the courses, the complete performance course, I'm also starting next month a brand new production course using hardware and software together in production. Those courses for December, January, February are all open for signups right now. And then there's a video only course. So if you're interested in just following the videos and not doing the twice weekly calls that we do for 4 weeks, the one-on-one session, the weekly feedback on your live setup. If you're not interested in that and you just want to watch the videos, there's a discounted version of the course that's a video only, and that's available on the website as well. That's at circolive.com/courses. And those are, there's a link to that down in the description below. The special that's going on right now for Black Friday, it's a countdown special. So the first 5 people, which I think there's still one spot left that sign up will get 50% off any course they sign up for. The next 5 will get 40%, the next 5 will get 30%, so on and so on until all the discounts are gone. So if you've thought about doing any of the courses and you want to do one of the ones either coming up December, January, or February, go ahead and sign up for those now and get the discount, and then you can sign up in advance for the course. So check those out, and yeah, it's quite a deal. So it's the biggest deal I've ever offered for the courses. Got to get in the Black Friday spirit, right? It's almost Thanksgiving here in the US. So check that out. And just so you know how the courses go, there's about 50 plus videos that are exclusive to the courses that I haven't posted anywhere else. Then in addition to that, 2 times a week, we do an hour-long group call for everybody that's in that session of the course, where we ask questions, Q&A session about that part of the course or about pretty much anything. Then there's a 1-hour one-on-one that you can set up anytime you like, and we can go over anything you want, however you'd like that to go. And then each week you can send me a video up to 10 minutes of you performing live, and I will send you back feedback via email. Then there's also an online group where anybody who's ever taken the course before is all part of that group. So you can join in, you can meet people in your area, you can bounce questions off of each other, you can get ideas for other people's live rigs and what they're doing and how they're doing stuff. So it's pretty cool. I think the people who've done it have really enjoyed it. You can ask. There's quite a few in the chat here who are either in the course now or have been. So definitely feel free to ask them questions. I'm sure they'll be happy to answer, and I'm happy to answer as well. So if you have questions, pop those into the chat. All right, let's see here. I did not make it to Machina Bristronica. Unfortunately, I was trying to extend and go the week before ADE, and it didn't end up working out with work and expenses and stuff. So I didn't end up going this time, but hopefully next time. Looked like it was a lot of fun. Let's see. Sound check good. Awesome. Thank you, Wesley. The course is fantastic. Awesome. Glad to hear that. He's in the middle of the course right now, so I'm glad to hear it's going well. James agrees. He did it as well. And it really doesn't matter your level. It's really about improvised live performance. So the level, the type of gear you have, the type of music you're making doesn't really impact it too much. So whatever you're interested in, it's all possible. So yeah. So if you're interested in that, sign up now and take advantage of the discount right now. The longer you wait, the discounts will go down as people sign up. So jump right in. So anyway, let's go a little bit over what we got going on here. I'll show you the new views. So obviously the overhead view, which we've always had, but there's a new view, side view from over here. So you can see a bit of the larger modular setup and then the full rig over here. The only thing you can't see is just out of view here is this guy, which is controlling the 1010 black box. So that's over there, out of view, controlling the black box here, just because it's a bit easier to have hands-on control over the black box than it is to try and go into the touch screen when you are performing live. There we go. We'll get a view there with everything else. So yeah, so big topic for today is going to be the Digitone 2. So I just got this yesterday. The folks at Zound sent this over to me to try out. Thanks to those guys. If you're interested in getting one, there's an affiliate link down below to Zound's. It's great. You can do payments, which is pretty cool. And if you're interested in any of the modular gear, they don't do modular, but there's also an affiliate link to Perfect Circuit. So you can check those down below. Those affiliates really do help a lot. Doesn't cost you anything. And I appreciate the help, definitely, right now. So anyway, the Digitone 2. So what is it? It's an FM synth. That's where it started. The Digitone 1 was their FM synth. It was out for a while. And this is, for me, this is more than just an updated version of the one. It's actually a totally new synth. So it still has the FM engine, which is exactly the same as it was in the Digitone 1, but it is, actually, I'm gonna make this a little bigger here. That's not the only thing that it has now. It's not just an FM synth. They added in a bunch of digital engines, which are kind of like the digital engines that were in the Syntakt, or that are in the Syntakt. And then they also added wavetable, which is pretty cool. It's their first real wavetable. I mean, some of the other ones do it kind of, but this is the first real wavetable. So because of that, and a whole bunch of other upgrades, for me, the reason I really wanted to try it out was because it really feels like something new. I was not a gigantic fan of the Digitone 1. I had one for a while and ended up getting rid of it as soon as the Syntakt came out, because what I was really looking for was multiple voices in one box. And the Digitone was only 4 tracks. So you could really only have 4 voices at once going on in there. Even though it had 8 notes of polyphony, it was only on 4 voices. So for me, it wasn't super useful for my live set. I wanted to be able to have more voices and more flexibility in one box. So now with the Digitone 2, obviously the first big giant change was the fact that they went from 4 tracks or 4 voices to 16 tracks or 16 voices. From 8 notes of polyphony to 16 notes of polyphony. So it really did change things up quite a bit as far as what it's capable of doing. So already from that, it was more interesting to me. They upgraded the one thing that was the biggest drawback for me, which was the number of voices. So then when they added in all of the additional engines, again, made it super interesting. If we go into machines, actually go into machines, so you have FM tone, which is kind of the standard FM voice that was in it before. There's FM drum, which is that same standard FM voice, but that's geared more towards making drum sounds. It's a little bit reconfigured, the way that it works, like the parameters you can adjust, and it's more focused on envelopes and things like that to make it more kind of drum based. And then you have the wave tone, which is wavetable, and then the swarmer, which is kind of a classic swarm synth. Like if you've listened to anything that's a swarm synth, so you can do, for example, multiple saw waves, and then you can detune them so you can have it be the sound of a really, really big synth. So so they added that in. Then they also made it so that in the past it had 4 tracks of audio and 4 tracks of MIDI that were separate. Now, like with the Digitakt 2 and like with the Syntakt, any of these tracks can also be MIDI tracks, or, I mean, not also. You have to choose between audio or MIDI. So you have a choice of how many you want to use for MIDI and how many you want to use for audio, which is really handy, because that way, you could have whatever, 13 tracks of audio and 3 MIDI tracks controlling other things if you wanted to. So it's pretty cool to be able to have it be that flexible and being able to switch it around. So you can use it to control other things or things internally, which is also really cool. On top of that, they also added in a lot of the new upgrades that have come with the Syntakt, and then the Digitakt 2 also came to this. So you have with the sequencer, you have the Euclidean sequencer built into this. You've got 3 LFOs per track times 16 tracks. So there's a ton of flexibility. You've got 48 LFOs basically that you can do with all of those different engines. And then you have some of the different effects in this as well. So this has the chorus, which I think the Digitone 1 already had a chorus. But being able to have that built in, plus a bit reducer and a sample rate reducer, it's pretty cool in here to be able to use that with the functionality of the different synths. Then you've also got, within the trigger section. So if you're familiar with the electron sequencers, the older version used to give you the choice of, you could either have a probability, like a percentage, or you could have a condition, or you could have a fill condition. So fill or not fill as you pressed on the fill button. This one, like with the Digitac 2, gives you those things separated out. So you can have them going at the same time. So you could put in the probability, you could have something happen, I don't know, 48% of the time, only when, only on the third time through, and only when the fill button is pressed out. So you can kind of layer those different conditions that you would have normally in the electron sequencer. So already, that was a really powerful tool. And now they've made it, with these last two boxes, they've made it so that those are all available with each other instead of having to choose between them. So it does make for, I don't know, a more useful, more functional sequencer. The electron sequencer was already crazy functional, so this is another way to do that. So that's kind of an overview of things that it does now. So there are a few other things that we can talk a little bit more about. The transposing is a bit easier with this now. There's a unison function, so you can split the voices and have them in unison, so you can build bigger, fatter voices. You've also got the kit ability to save kits, and then the perform kit functionality, which is the same as the Digitac 2. So you can see that each time they're coming out with something new, they're kind of adding in the new stuff into the next thing as well. So it's pretty cool that we're now starting to see some of this new functionality come over to all of the new pieces of gear that come out. All right, so let's take a look in the chat. Again, if you have any questions in the chat, please, or if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And I'm happy to get to whatever I can. Hi from Mallorca. Awesome. I love Mallorca. And Ibiza. I mean, the Balearic Islands, kind of my favorite place, no matter where, so they're all good. Let's see, James. Course is definitely most direct and comprehensive way to understand hardware, improv, bi-weekly meetups, help stay focused, and were probably my favorite part. Awesome. Thanks, James. Great group of folks, too. I agree. I think, of all the things with the course, you kind of hit on my two favorites, which I wasn't 100% sure how everything was going to end up when I made the course. But the fact that everybody kind of hangs out together and can go in the group together and get to know each other and maybe meet up in your local area, I think is really cool. And then the group calls are super useful, because I think that there's a lot of times when you may not even know what to ask, and somebody else asks it, so you can learn something really interesting, even though you didn't have that question yourself. So it's, yeah, those have been, I agree, those have been really fun byproducts of the class. So anyway, if you have other questions, pop those into the chat, and otherwise we will keep talking a little bit about the Digitone 2. So let's go in first of all, and let's just look at some of the engines. So what I did yesterday, one of the things that's really fun with this, actually let me save what I've got here. One of the things that's really fun with the synth versions of Electron machines, these new ones at least, so Digitone and Syntact. Digitac does this as well, but for me it doesn't work quite as well. The thing that I really love with these is being able to randomize things. So like as idea generators, and randomizing within a synth, randomizing parameters within a synth can be a ton of fun. So let's just go to a new pattern here. So actually, it might just go to a totally new project. Save the old one, initializing a new project. All right, so as you can hear, it's all just like a single tone, so just a single sine wave, which is kind of where the FM stuff always gets started. So what's really interesting is being able to randomize, like I said. So you can go into let's see if I can get some more volume here. Should be okay. This will get louder in a second as we start to go into this. So to be able to go into the parameters of a synth, and if you hold down synth and hit yes, it will randomize all those parameters that are on that screen. So then you've got something new each time. It doesn't always make something cool. So let's start with a basic voice here, or basic sound here. Sorry, I'm trying to get some extra volume out of this. Okay, so if you start with something like that, and then you go in, let's go, for example, to effects, and hit effects, and yes, that randomizes the whole effects page. So now, this page is something totally different now. Again, randomize. Again. And then you can do the same with all of the different pages. So like if you go back to the synth page and do that. So each time you can randomize and it creates a new sound that's not a preset, that's not something that you would have necessarily ever done before. And so it gives you a great starting point. So what I did with my other project, let's go back to this one. No. Okay. Loading up the new one. So now I'm back on the old project. Oops. Sorry. I think I might have overwritten my old thing, which doesn't really matter because it's what I wanted to show you was what I was doing before is you can go into a new project. There we go. That's what I wanted. So this is the project that I had before. So what I did in order to set up sounds here was I just went through and I randomized sounds until I found something I liked on each one of the tracks. So now I have 16 tracks. Of different sounds, different things that I can then use. So then I can start into kind of my normal improv workflow, and it gives me a random set of sounds to use, at least as a starting point. So it's a lot of fun. It's kind of like with the Ableton Move that just came out. When you open up a new project with that, it automatically assigns different sounds to the tracks each time. So it just gives you a creative place to start from. I like being able to do it this way because I can then just randomize and go in and, you come up with some really interesting, cool things that you wouldn't have necessarily come up with when you do the randomization thing. So then the way that I'm using this is I have this connected via MIDI from the Oxy One, and I'm using sequencers 2 and 3. So sequencer 2 is tracks 1 through 8. Sequencer 3 is tracks 9 through 16. So as we go into here, just do a little kick drum. The kick's coming from here in the modular. But then if we go into one of these other tracks, so I was just messing around with some stuff before. So if I unmute some of these tracks, everything that's on these tracks is all coming from the Digitone. So this is everything coming from the Digitone 2, except for the kick drum. The kick's coming from here. I think I know. Hold on. Let me adjust this really quick, because I believe. There we go. I didn't have my full output on. So there we go. So again, it makes it really simple to kind of control everything from one place. And that's why I use the Oxy One to sequence everything, even in the Electron sequence, or in the Electron devices. So within this, I could of course sequence within there. One of the reasons why I use the Oxy One rather than the internal sequencers when I'm doing melodic stuff is I love the ability to be able to randomize things in key and keeping things in key. You can do things in key within the Digitone and the Digitact, but you can't randomize, and you certainly can't randomize just pitch rather than the pitch and the notes together. So for example, within the Digitone, let me go back through it and mute all these things. You can hear one thing at a time. So something coming from the Digitone. So here on this track, that's coming from this track right here. So let's say I like that pattern, but I want to change up the notes that are on that. I can go into the randomization, and I can go in here. Oops. If I go into the randomization, I can do just pitch, so I can keep that same pattern, but I can just change up the notes. And if I hit it again, so you see, you can keep the same gate pattern, you can keep the same rhythmical pattern, but change up the notes within it. You can't do that within the Electron boxes by themselves, and so that's why anytime I'm sequencing something that's melodic, whether it's the modular case or the Digitone, or when I was doing like melodic one-shots in the Digitact, I'm doing all of those from within the Oxy One, so that I keep that control. Because one of the ways that I like to write things is to go in and write gate patterns that I really enjoy, even if it's just on a single note, and then I can go in and randomize the pitch to whatever key I've set here. So that way I have more control over the rhythm, but I'm allowing the randomization from the machine of the pitch to help generate melodic ideas as we go. So it's randomization, but with a bit more control. So trying to keep things, keep some guardrails on the randomization, so it's not just kind of randomized all over the place. So let's see what we've got here. Hey, Christopher, what's going on? James, how do you feel about the FM drums? Any chance you can replace the Syntact in any circumstances? Yeah, as you mentioned, the drums are very FM. So if that's a sound you like, yeah, you could definitely use this instead of the Syntact for drums. However, if the drum synths, the drum engines in the Syntact that you're using tend to be the analog ones, it will sound different, because those analog engines sound really different from the FM engines. But the FM drum sounds do sound pretty good. Let's here just go through some of the sounds here. So the kicks, for example. So you can see the kicks are pretty strong. So that's just a number of the kicks that are in there. If we go through and clear that out, then you've got things like snares. So again, they don't sound super natural. They don't sound, the same way they would if they were a sample, for example, coming from the Digitone. But there is a lot of flexibility within those sounds. So if it's something that you're interested in, the drum sounds are good. It's just you just have to know going in, you're getting FM sounding drums. The FM drum engine is specifically set up. So let's see here. If we go into that and go to the FM drum. So it's specifically set up to do drum sounds. So to be able to go into here, let's just take this back to kind of neutral. So you have things like, here, I'm going to take the effects off of this so you can keep it pretty clean so you can hear the sounds themselves. And you can change the tuning if you want to go. And you've got different wave shapes for the FM, so for the different types of frequency modulation. And then you have different algorithms. And then you have wave shaping, or wave folding, sorry. And then of course you've got your envelopes, so you can take these all the way back to traditional sine waves. So you can hear everything within that FM drum engine is really set up to make drum sounds. So all of this, it's the same engine as the one that was in the Digitone 1, and it's there for all of the other sounds, but it's just they've changed the interface so that you have more control over things like the envelopes and attack and things like that. So having sweep time and depth and folding and stuff like that makes it so that you're dialing in the FM drum sounds more than a kind of a traditional FM tone sound, if that makes sense. For anybody who's ever messed around with FM synthesis before, it can be really confusing, and it had a long reputation of being crazy confusing. And one of the things that I think they did with the Digitone 1 was they kind of made it accessible. They limited the amount of things that you had control over, and they kind of dialed in the parameters so that whatever you were adjusting, it was relatively easy to make it sound good. Whereas with traditional FM, like if anybody's ever messed around with a DX7, it's really easy to make it sound really awful. It's not so easy to make it sound good other than the presets. So with something like this, it made it kind of more accessible. Now they've kind of taken that a step farther because you have that same accessibility in the traditional engine, but then they're giving additional accessibility if you want to specifically do drums within it, because I know a lot of people are using these Electron boxes as drum machines. So definitely a super capable machine. It was already with the Digitone 1, and with this, I think they just made it. They just gave you more options of what to do with it, with the other different types of engines, and then the different accessibility to the drum parts of the FM. So, yeah, because of that, it's definitely capable as a drum machine, for sure. Let's see here. If I wouldn't be so deep into the droid, I would love the Oxy as well. Yes, the Oxy is pretty awesome. I told somebody the other day, it's my favorite piece of kit because you could swap out anything here to any other synthesizers or any other modular, and I could still control it with the Oxy. And that's what I love about it, is that it's that one thing that you get to learn, you get to know it really well, and then you can use it to make it so that you're able to play all the other things. So yeah, I definitely enjoy it. What else do we have here? Let's see. Do you sequence the gate pattern or play them in the sequence? I generally sequence my gate patterns just because I'm faster like that. And because I'm writing stuff on the fly, I like the precision of sequencing rather than trying to make it work by playing it in, because I'm klutzy with trying to play it in. I never do it exactly the way I want. Then you have to worry about quantization and the amount that it's quantized or not quantized. I just prefer to use the sequencer because I'm much, much quicker with the sequencer. And I've kind of set up some things for myself to have some kind of cheats for rhythms with things that I like with some of these things I've written on the tape down below. Gives me some positions that I like and some ways to find my way around the sequencer so that I can get the sounds that I want relatively quickly, rather than having to do take after take after take until I record it in properly. Specifically, that's for performing live. Like sometimes when I'm producing, I'll play things in more than when I'm playing live, just because you have a lot of do-overs when you're producing. So I'll put it in. If I don't like it, I can erase it, or I can overdub, or I can make adjustments, and nobody's listening to it at that time. Where when I'm playing live, I really like the precision of this because I'm not cueing while I'm writing live. So I'm either writing blind where I don't hear it, or I'm writing with something that's already out. So like, like with a kick drum, if I was going along with this, I can, while I'm playing live, I can switch that up from a regular kick to something. So I can do this stuff live while I'm playing. And often I'll do that while I'm performing, and so I prefer to be able to do that the same melodically, because for me the gate pattern parts of melodies are often this. So I will sequence them in a way that I know I like that setup. Especially, it's one of the things I really like with the multi sequencers with the Oxy One. So when it's on a multi, I have different instruments next to each other within the sequencer. So I can do things like I can see where the steps go. So for example, these are going to be my 4 on the floor kick. With these two, if I wanted to play this synth on this line and this synth on this line, I know that these are going to be kind of a call and response type of sound just because of how they're set up in there. So make that end there so you can kind of hear this. So if I was to play like this and I bring in this one, here I'm going to change this so it's 8 steps as well, like the other. And then I can bring in the next instrument. And I know they're going to be in a format that's kind of a call and response format, because I can see them next to each other, where I know if they're here, they're going to play together. And it's a way that I can keep things from stepping on top of one another just visually by looking at them. Right? Even to the point where you do like this. Right, So you can see no matter what you're doing with them, you can always kind of see visually where they are next to each other. And so it's another reason why I like using the multi-sequencer here, because it frees me up to be able to do that. It frees me up to be able to see what I'm doing rather than having to listen to it. I can see visually what something's doing before I bring it in, and then I can start to bring it in and do the sound design part that I like to do live. So yeah, and the same thing goes for, with the using the multi-sequencers for the Digitone 2, because I've got 1 through 8 and 9 through 16 separate. I know that if I'm on here and I'm using, this sequencer is 9, then if I was to put things like this, and move them around, I know that 9 and 10 next to each other are gonna not step on each other. So I can use those instruments together to play something. So it just makes it's kind of, I don't know, it's a cheat code for this, to be able to do stuff quickly live on the fly without having to cue stuff up as you're performing live. So let's see what else we've got here. The FM drum is so good. I wish I could get it on my rhythm. Love the transient noise generator for layering on it. Yeah, it's great. I mean, the rhythm's great on its own. It's I'm the broken record on the rhythm. It's still my favorite drum machine ever, bar none, no matter what. Because you have analog drum synths and samples in the same place. So to be able to do that. So to be able to use that, I mean, taking something like the Digitone and being able to sample from it into the rhythm, and then take that sample and layer analog synth engines on top of it to make new drum sounds that you can then resample and use as just an individual one shot. It's crazy powerful. So that's why I love the rhythm. It's really my favorite. I do really enjoy the sound of the Digitone. As far as kicks go, I'm taking my kick from within my modular, so I don't really need to worry about kicks here. And I'm still trying to dial in the hats to a way that I like them. I haven't found hats that I like more than my, kind of classic 909 sample hats that I use in the Digitact. So for right now, I'm using them together. We'll see where that ends up going. If I end up finding some great sounds within the Digitone, well, then maybe I'll keep using that. Who knows? We'll see. Let's see here. Yeah, they are fine kicks. The FM kicks in this are really good. I like them. For me, the strongest kind of traditional sounds out of this are the kicks and the basses. Both of those sound really, really good in this. And then I love the kind of metallic, non-traditional sound design that you can do with this, which lends itself very well to the style of music that I do. So because of that, I really enjoy it. I really enjoy those engines. Forgetting traditional sounds though, I think kicks and bass is what I've found so far that sound good. Cymbals a bit less. Snares are okay, but could be me. I will mess around with them some more. Let's see. And you can sidechain against the kicks. It's such a great all-in-one unit. Digitone 2, 100% my desert island synth now. Yeah, it's cool. I wonder, does this have, so if we go into, oh yeah. So, yeah, you just mentioned something that's really cool. Something that was new to the Digitact 2 that is now definitely in the Digitone 2 is the routing of the compressor. So it has a master compressor, which was always kind of, previous to these Mark II models, it was kind of unusable because, or at least as a sidechain, because if you sidechained it to your kick track was still going through the master. So if you turned up your threshold, every time the kick would engage, it wouldn't duck everything but the kick, it would duck everything including the kick. So the more you turned it up, the more kind of pumping you were going for, the more and more you would lose your kick because it would turn it down as well. And you could mess a little bit with the the filtering on it, but you kind of had to decide, so do you want to lose the low end every time it hits, or do you want to lose the high end every time it hits? Because you were going to lose something the way that it was set up. So with these, you can go into the compressor routing, which is this part right here. So you just function and the setup. And then when you go into compressor routing, you get to select which of the 16 tracks go through the compressor. So let's say you had a kick on one, you could take the one out of what was going into the compressor. And so then you could sidechain to one and have everything but your kick duck. So it makes it way more functional. Digitac 2 was the first one to have that, and now Digitone 2 has it. So that was a huge upgrade in the Digitac 2. For me, it was, I think, the biggest upgrade, because I don't really care about stereo samples, because most of the stuff I do is mono anyway. So for me, the biggest upgrade was the functionality of the compressor and being able to decide what gets routed through the compressor. Now they've added that to the Digitone 2, which is just, it's another super sweet functionality. The other thing that they both do now as well, if you're familiar with the Mark 1s, they have the Control All. So if you wanted to, you can control all of the tracks all at once, let's say with an effect or with a filter or things like that. With this, you can now configure the Control All. So again, just like with the compressor, you can go through and say, I only want these tracks to be affected by the Control All. So it kind of becomes like a Control Sum instead of Control All, which is, again, really, really, really super functional. Hold on. Ooh, they did it. Oh my God, I didn't even know this did this. So I just found a new function that I didn't know that this did. So when I was at Superbooth, I was talking to the software engineer from Electron, and we talked about being able to do this, and he said that this was something that was coming. I don't think this is on the... No, so it's not on the Digitac. So this is a brand new thing on the Digitac 2. So basically, when you go into that setup page, so function and filter is your setup of your things. The third one down is called track layering. And what this does, it says right now, track 16, because that's the one I was on. So if I actually go out of there and let's say I go to track 1, and then I go back into here, now it says track 1 will trigger, and you can select. So now the sequence that's on track 1 will trigger all of these other ones. And what that means is, practically from the standpoint of writing music, that means that you can layer sounds the same way that you do in a DAW. So let's say you wanted to have, you wanted your kick to have a low sound, a mid sound, and a high sound. You could layer all of those together and have those all triggered at once as if it was one instrument being played, and you have individual control over the layers. Now with the Digitone 2, you have the ability to layer up to all 16 of the tracks, which I can't imagine why you would ever want to do that. But let's say you wanted to layer 3 different tracks. So you wanted a wavetable synth, an FM synth, and an FM drum synth to all play the same note at the same time with individual controls over those parameters, and you only had to sequence it from one track. So it allows you to be able to just change up the sequence there, and that track can then have the functionality of parameter locks, of probabilities, of fill conditions, all of that stuff, all on one track. And that one track sequencer will control whatever other tracks you told it to set up. So I had no idea that was even in there. I hadn't seen anybody talk about that yet. So I just kind of stumbled on that. So we're stumbling on this stuff together, which is pretty cool. So let's see if we do, so let's go into track layering. Let's say we want one to control, I don't know, let's do some random ones. So it's going to control 1, 5, 10, and 12. So then we come out of there and we go make sure that we didn't have to save that. Okay, perfect. So now as we come out of there, if we go into track 1, notice as I hit that, it triggers all of them. This one, I'm going to change up. I have that pitched to super low. Okay, so those are my 4 sounds. So I've got 1, then 5, 10, and 12. But now when I trigger 1, it will trigger all of them. So now if I go into track 1 and I do a sequence like this, I have to unmute it. So now it's just playing that one, and I can unmute those parts of that sound independently from one another. So sequence 1 is controlling all of them. I'm going to go in and make this one much shorter. Change up these sounds a bit, tighten them up. So in effect, what this is doing is this is allowing this sequence to control all of these different tracks, but you've got individual control over each of the tracks. So if I go into track 5, I can turn the volume down. So now it's not being played at all, or I can bring it way back up. I can go into each. So that's all of them playing, or you can mute out. So that's pretty cool, and that's pretty game-changing to be able to control multiple tracks off of one individual track to, in effect, layer those sounds, and to be able to, in effect, morph between the sounds by adjusting the volumes of those two sounds. So kind of like what you can do on the analog rhythm, where you can have a synth sound and a sample sound together, and you can change the sound by adjusting the volume of each one of them to make it into different types of sounds. So let's say you have a hi-hat sample and a hi-hat synth. You can morph between those to make an infinite number of synths. So now with this, you can do virtually the same thing, although with multiple layers. So you could go in and say, let's say you had tracks 1 through 4 were all being controlled by 1. That could be 4 different layers of kicks or different types of kicks, and you could adjust the volume. If you were to go into the mixer menu, you've got all 4 of those right next to each other. So you could adjust multiple things all together at the same time, right next to each other. So being able to do that is, that's huge. I didn't even know it could do that. I know he talked to me about it, about them being able to do that in the future, but I didn't know that that was implemented here. I had not seen that at all yet. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay, so it looks like you need to have unmuted the original track. So I couldn't mute the original track and just have that sequencer control the other one. So you have to have the first one, but you could go in and turn it all the way down, right? So now this is just 5. Now I can fade in and I can fade out 5. So this is giving me some really cool ideas for performance and for transitioning in performance. I'm going to move my camera just a little. So performance and for transitioning in performance, because what you could do then is you could in effect double up your tracks and have, 1 control 9, 2 control 10, 3 control 11, and you could have 2 different versions of the same sound. So you could have, 2 different types of kicks, 2 different types of claps, 2 different kinds of hats, 2 different kinds of toms. And then while you're performing, morph between those sounds, but all of it being controlled by sequencers 1 through 8. So controlling a second layer, just like what you can do in the analog rhythm, which is pretty badass. I had no idea it could do that. So let's go back in and do that. So we're going to make 1 control 9, and then we're going to make 2 control 10. I'll just do it on the first 4 tracks so that we can see how it works. Okay, so basically the way it's set up now, 1 controls these 2, 2 controls these 2, 3 controls these 2, and 4 controls these 2. So now, let's go to 4, for example. We will let's put in just a sequence in here, just something random. So that's my sequence that's on 4. It's triggering 12, you can see, but 12 is muted. So now if I unmute 12, now those two are working together, so they're both being sequenced from 4. So now if I was to go into this menu, I can decide how much of 12 I want and how much of 4 I want. And then I'm assuming, let's see, if I go into 4, see what it does. So the effects still remain independent by track. So the effect is, again, you can change up how much of each effect you want within each one of those tracks. Okay, now I have to try something. So if I go back here, now if I trigger track 4 from the Oxy, does it also trigger track 12? It does. That's pretty badass. So what you can see here, what I'm actually doing is I'm triggering track 4 from the Oxy. So I can, here, let me put some notes. So I'm triggering track 4, and track 4 is triggering track 12. So now I'm able to have those two sounds. I can take out the 4, and you hear the note pattern, the pitch pattern is still triggering in 12, even though I'm not triggering track 12 from here. I'm only triggering 4, which is in turn triggering 12. So being able to do this is pretty cool. I've never seen anything do this before. And yeah, we're learning this together. Welcome to the live stream. I had no idea it did that. So now we're figuring it out. Like I said, I just got this like 24 hours ago. So again, this opens up a crazy amount of possibilities, because now what I'm going to do is rather than using 2 separate sequencers to trigger the 2 rows, I'm just going to use one sequencer and trigger 1 through 8. And then I'm going to have that trigger 9 through 16. And then I can use the volume faders to morph between those sounds. So I can have multiple different amounts of each one of those sounds. So yeah, very, very interesting. So, sorry, I'm neglecting the chat here. Let's see what you guys have to say. Nice trick marking the gates. Sure, it is. It's, I don't know if it's a trick. It's just something that helps me overcome my klutziness of not being able to do stuff in the dark when I'm playing. Nice 2 HP panel to the left of the mixer. Oh yeah. You guys like that? Where did I get that? I got that at KnobCon last year or 2 years ago. I can't remember which stand it was at, but it was one of the little spacers that they were giving away. So I figured it was apropos. Let's see here. Is the waveform synth machine in the Rhythm MK2? No. There is not a waveform synth machine in the Rhythm. Great way to conceptualize a setup, having a universal sequencer controller where everything else becomes part of the palette that you can change out. Yeah, I mean, that's why for me, the one essential piece of gear in this whole setup is the Oxy, because everything else I can change up. Like if I wanted to, I could pull out the modular, I could bring in 3 other synths and take these out and bring in other stuff, and then I just have to route from the Oxy to whatever I'm going to use. And so it becomes still controllable in a way that I really like. The thing that's cool with the Oxy too is I think that with a lot of synths that have built-in sequencers, unless it's like something that's really special, you know, like the Electron sequencers are really special, the way you can parameter lock the different parameters of the sound engines to the step. But if it was just a traditional sequencer, or, you know, a lot of things have really klutzy sequencers that are not very easy, like the, you know, like a 303, or, you know, any of the clones of the 303s, or even something like a Minilog. I mean, it can be difficult to decide, like, okay, how do I want to use each one of these things? And you're trying to think about how the different sequencers work on every single device you use. When you have something like the Oxy, you don't have to worry about that. It's always the same sequencers. So once you get used to how these ones work, you can plug it into anything you want, whether it's modular or hardware or whatever, and you can always kind of do the same thing. I really like it as well, because I think I've mentioned this before, but when I travel, I will put, like, I'll take my phone and I will put, let's see here. If you go into the music section, I don't know if you can see this on my phone, but there's a whole bunch of different synths in here. So like I can go to the Moog Model D and I can take this synth that's here, I can control it via Bluetooth MIDI from the Oxy, and I can write patterns in the Oxy that I like using this as the sound source with my AirPods in the phone. And then I can save that. And then when I get back into my studio, I can just reroute that track to a synth in the modular, or to a track in one of the groove boxes. And that way I can use this as kind of my on-the-go sketchpad with random sounds. You know, like I've got koala sampler in there, so you can have any sample you want, any kind of sound you want, and you can set it up so that it can use different tracks, and so you could sample whole drum parts with multi-tracks and stuff like that within your phone. But you're not actually sampling anything in your phone. You're just using it as a sound source. You're sequencing everything within the Oxy, and then you can save it into the Oxy, and then you just reroute it. And it's super easy to reroute. So like within the multi-track, like if I want to send like, let's say this first track down here, you just hold the sequencer that you're on and then the track, and then you get the choice of where you're going to send it. So right now it's being sent out to 1A. So that means it's going to sequence track 1 going over MIDI A, because this has 48 channels of outgoing MIDI. So you have 1 through 16A, 1 through 16B, 1 through 16C. So it allows you to send all those out. And if you want, you don't even have to send it out via MIDI. I could send it out via CV. So this is sequencer 2, track 1. So if I just go into the CV gate section and I go to sequencer 2, which is this 1, 2, 3, 4. So sequencer 2, I have an empty space here on 6. So if I go to sequencer 2, CV6 and track 1, or I can set it to whatever track I want. So if I set this on 1 and I set this here, and then I do the same with gate, so now that will send out via gate or CV and gate 6, and at the same time MIDI, because I didn't take off the MIDI. So you can set the MIDI to off and send it only out via CV. You can set the CV, you can take the CV away and send it out only via MIDI, or you can send it out both, however you choose to. And so you see how easy it is to change the settings. So once you have something kind of set up the way you like it, you can then route it any way you want to. So yeah, that's why the Oxy for me is kind of the key to everything I do. So let's see. Syntact has this too. What does the Syntact have too? I'm not sure. Is the Syntact able to do that now? Did they do an update that I didn't see? Anyway, we'll see. Definitely helps you learn the sequencer deeply instead of being mid at multiple. Yeah, I agree. That's kind of the thing. Like, you know, one of the things that people complain about with a lot of pieces of gear, whether it's the Octatrack or the Deluge or whatever. So like, yeah, I love this thing, but then I set it down for a week, and when I take it back up again, I can't remember how anything works. So I have to go in and check out the manual again and kind of relearn everything. That's the advantage of having one outboard sequencer that you can really easily interconnect with a lot of different stuff. It allows you to learn this really well and get really deep at this. And then, you know, when I get a new piece of gear, even if I've never used it before, I can just connect it via MIDI and I can already start doing stuff with it without having to learn its sequencer if I don't want to. And if I want to, great, but this just allows me kind of a shortcut to be able to do that faster on something that I already love to use. So, very handy. Game Boy. Was that what the sound sounded like? You have a Store t-shirt? Yeah, this is my Store sweatshirt. Got to support the guys in Rotterdam. Let's see. Yeah, it's actually pretty awesome. I agree with you, James. It was a little overwhelming with 16 individual tracks, but layering can be where it's at. Yeah, I think so too. I mean, 16 tracks gives you a ton of flexibility. So you can have different things. So for example, you would probably never have 16 tracks playing at the same time, but to be able to set up almost a multiple songs where, you know, track 1 through 4 or 1 through 8 was one track, one song that you were going to play, and then 9 through 16 was another one. You could do it that way, or you could have, you know, 1 through 8 be audio tracks and 9 through 16 be MIDI tracks and sequence other gear with that. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. I wonder though, now you got me thinking, what if So that's interesting too, because so what I just did was I just swapped out the engine that's on track 12 from being an audio engine to being a MIDI engine. So track 12 is now a MIDI track that's sending out MIDI to control something else. So if I'm not wrong, because when I play this, it's still triggering 12, and 12 is a MIDI track. So what that says to me is that I can then, I'm gonna have to try this with some synths later on. It'll take me too long to wire it right now, but I'll definitely try this and let you guys know. What that says to me is that I could send out track 12 to, I don't know, my polybrute over there. And I can layer a polybrute sound with an electron, FM sound from the Digitone 2, controlled by the Oxy, and I can change up how much those are being sent. So, interesting. They're always giving me other stuff to mess with here, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I'm gonna take this back to, yeah. So that's back to the voice. So that's only 12 playing now. Now I'm bringing in 4. So that's those two playing together. If I was to go back to 12, I can take it back out again. And I think I'm using some odd sounds here. So let's go into some kind of more normal sounds here. So let's make this first one a lead, some sort of like a piano something. Make that one a pad. And we're going to 12 here. So you can hear one of them is this pad. So one of them is that, the track 12 is now that kind of pluckier sound, and track 4 is this pad. And again, those are layering together in here, but being controlled from the Oxy. So now if I was to change this up, and again, now you can go back in and start to adjust individual parameters of this. So already there's a lot of interesting sound design that you can do within the Digitone 2, but now being able to layer up to 16 things and changing those out, it gives you just a crazy amount of flexibility. So what I'm doing right now is kind of switching back and forth between the two different sounds and adjusting the parameters within those sounds. So what I'm doing right now is I'm detuning the volume of detuning the pitch of the two oscillators in the FM engine of that pad sound. You can change up the wave shape as well. Cool. So obviously you can get lost in this for hours. So again, just to go back through what we're doing right here, because it's something that is really complex, but really simple at the same time. So the notes and gate are being controlled from the Oxy one. They're being sent only to track 2 on the Digitone. The Digitone was set up with the track layering so that track 2 is layering, the track 4 is layering with track 12. And that means that every time track 4 is triggered from the Oxy, that is also triggering 12. Then you can set different sounds. I just put a couple different presets. So one that was a little pluckier and one that was a little bit more of a pad on those two different tracks, so that they're both being triggered together. Then you can go in and you can adjust the volume between the two to decide the ratio of how much you want of each of those sounds, kind of morphing between those sounds. And then you can go in and adjust the individual parameters of each of those sounds in order to make them sound like something else. So yeah, that's crazy. Like, that's really crazy how powerful that is. And that's just having 2 tracks layered, right? You can layer up to 16. So you could have every track on this be a different, I mean, this would sound like a cluster, but just think of the possibilities of different variations of this. You could have up to 16 different sounds with different effects on every single layer, with different volume settings on every layer to create incredibly complex sounds that you could then trigger from one track internally or from an external sequencer, like what I'm doing right now. So what's interesting is that this is controlling track 4, but if we go into track 4, I'll take those out of there, there's no sequence in track 4. And if I go to 12, there's no sequence there, but so this is, there's nothing internally that's sequencing here. The only thing is I'm using those 2 tracks layered as the sound engine that I'm sequencing from over here, right? So I could go in if I wanted to, and I could sequence something else in here. And then I can so now those are coming out here because if you leave this muted, right, so it's not lit up, whatever's coming from here will be the only thing that controls it. As soon as you unmute it, now it's playing both sequences together. So you can have 2 sequences, kind of like you do in the new Moog Labyrinth, where you have 2 sequencers that kind of play off of each other. So now I can go into this sequencer if I want, and I can say, I want to make the sequence, whatever, 12 track or 12 steps long. So this is making a polymetric sequence play at the same time as an 8-step sequence that is playing the same voice that's also layered with a second voice, all being controlled from here. So again, this just gives you an absolutely ridiculous amount of flexibility to be able to layer sounds and create new interesting sounds, even if you weren't doing it with the Oxy. Like for me, that was just kind of, I wanted to see if it would work because that's how I sequence stuff. But you could do this all internally. So you can have that sequence that's on track 4, whatever that is. Now, if I was to unmute 12, so now the sequence that's on 4 is controlling 4 and 12. They're both unmuted. I can mute 12, or if I mute 4, the whole sequence mutes. So you have to have the first one playing. But so now I have that internally here, but if I mute those, I can play just the one from here. And if I want to play both, right? So that gives you the opportunity to kind of create a whole bunch of new craziness using an external sequencer and an internal sequencer, which you could already do that kind of muting one and playing the other or playing them together. You could already do that. I've done a bunch of videos about that on this channel. But now having the ability to layer sounds and mute and unmute individual portions of the sounds that are being played, individual layers to make different sounds. I get asked all the time about how to transition. This is like the ultimate transition tool, because you could have your old sound and your new sound, depending on which track you were going to be playing, and you could morph between individual sounds without ever changing anything by just having them layered. And you could set them up to be layered in advance. If you were playing non-improvised, you wanted to play kind of pre-set tracks, you could have your sound sources be all doubled up between track 1 and track 2, so you could morph between using the same sequence and then change up the sequence. So it could make for some really, really super smooth transitions. So yeah, that's pretty crazy. Anyway, look at all the stuff in the chat. If you have questions about this, as I do, feel free to put them in the chat, and I'm happy to experiment for you. Let's see. Turn the 2 HP pedal around. Yes, there is something on the back. I just don't want to pull it out right now. So let's see. Let's go up here. Different envelopes for each layer. Yeah, I mean, different everything. Different whole sounds, different lengths, different volumes, different dynamics, different effects. You know, you could have one layer being delayed while the other layer is not, one layer overdriven while I mean, this is the coolest thing I think I've ever seen in Electron Box, and we just stumbled upon it together. So yeah, anyway, and we have to get into listening only mode and try to sleep. It's late in Germany. All right, we'll see you later, Christopher. Do you send MIDI to modular with Oxy? If so, with which module? So the only time I do that is if the module takes MIDI by itself. I don't have I'm not using like a shuttle control or something like that where I can convert MIDI. I'm using the Oxy pipe. So everything is coming out this one cable, which is an HDMI cable, and it goes into the pipe, and that gives me my 8 CV and 8 gates that are coming out of this. So that way I can leave those patched, and when it comes time to travel or to roll up to a gig, all I have to do is unplug this. Everything else stays patched while I travel, and then when I get to the gig, I just plug this one thing in, and now the Oxy's patched into every single thing here. So super, super, super handy. Yeah, so I have in the past, actually have on my module over here, I have a couple of the black MIDI CV Erica synths modules, because with that one, you can do 2 voices per module, but it's not the most effective. Like if I was gonna do that, I would use something like the Endorphin shuttle control, because it gives you all 16 channels that you can then send to different destinations. So it's definitely the most versatile, and it also has USB, and it has a whole bunch of other things, so I would definitely use that. You think Digitone 2 made Syntakt obsolete? Can you produce analog sounding sounds with a Digitone 2? So obsolete, no. Like each one of the machines does something different. So with the Syntakt, the unique kind of value of the Syntakt is it's got 4 analog engines, which are true analog, and they sound fantastic. And you can do analog FM with those, which is really cool. You can frequency modulate between them and ring modulate between them, and so it's really powerful. You also have the effects block. So being able to send different things through different effects and control them together, you don't have to use the control all in that case. So for example, you could send individual things through the analog overdrive, and that can really give you amazing sound. So with the Syntakt, what I like to do is I'll send all the digital voices through the analog overdrive, and all of a sudden they all sound analog. So it gives you an amazing sound. This one sounds very FM, and it sounds very digital, which is fine because that's kind of the sound I'm going for with it. I mean, I've got analog voices here. I've got the bass line. You know, the BIA sounds pretty analog, even though it's a digital voice. So I don't necessarily need analog. I mean, I'm not kind of like an analog purist either. Like I think digital sounds just as good, if not better, in a lot of cases than analog. So I don't think it makes it obsolete. I think each one of them does their own unique thing. So whatever's more important for you, if you prefer analog sound, the Syntact is going to be definitely for you. If that is not as important to you, then this is pretty cool. I mean, especially with that layering thing. I mean, that blew me away. I'm going to spend hours on that tonight. That's kind of crazy. And as far as getting analog sounds with a Digitone too, not really. I mean, you can. I mean, I guess without being too controversial and getting blown up in the comments here, what is an analog sound to you? I mean, because really what makes analog things sound analog is their imperfections. So you can artificially add imperfections. You've got 3 LFOs per track. So if you wanted to add a slight amount of detune, like super slight, like have it go slightly in and out of tune, that sounds kind of analog. If you want to add some overdrive to it to create some additional harmonics, that sounds analog. So yes, you can, as much as you can with any synth. But as far as like, I don't know, you tell me what makes analog sound better than digital. I'll chuckle about that conversation for hours if you want to have it. Because I just think that every synth has its own unique features. And I think that some of those unique features of some classic analog synths have become being equated with analog sound, and it's not really. Like a Moog Model D sounds like a Moog Model D. It's not because it's analog. I can take another analog synth and it won't sound the same as that one. And that's kind of what makes analog for me, is that each synth is really unique. Now you can artificially add that uniqueness by adding slight warbles to the tuning, by adding by detuning voices slightly. So this has a super saw voice. A swarm voice. So you could take the swarm voice and then slightly detune. And yeah, I mean, there's things you could do. But I guess my question would be, what analog are you going for? Because analog, there's a big lump of things that gets called analog just because they are technically analog. So I guess that would be my question. What were you looking for? Let's see here. The Oxy pipe module in the case that allows for the integration. Yes, it is. Nice store hoodie. Thanks, Brian. I like it too. It's really comfy too, actually. Oxy pipe is a game changer. It is. Yeah. It's a game changer. The other thing that's really cool with Oxy is the split, which I think I have mine over here, is the Oxy split, because you can go from the MIDI out to the MIDI in, and then you've got 3 different outputs from the MIDI, and that takes you to your 1 through 16A, 1 through 16B, 1 through 16C. So I don't have it cabled like that right now, but I will soon. So that way you can kind of split those and make and get to 48 channels of outgoing MIDI, which is pretty crazy, because this has mod lanes as well. So you can set up like LFO mod lanes or envelopes or things like that in here and send those out via MIDI to other instruments. So you may have a synth that may not have, if you have a classic synth that has only one LFO, you could use multiple LFOs for here and send it via MIDI. So a lot of stuff that you can do with this that I don't usually do and I don't usually talk about on here, but it just gives it a ton of flexibility when you do that. Let's see here. Yeah, Oxy does have CV gate out on the device. So you can see there's 8 CV and 8 gate outputs on the back here. So you don't have to use the pipe, but what this does is it keeps you from having to cable into your case from your sequencer. And when you travel as much as I do, it's nice to be able to leave everything patched and not have to roll up for a show and repatch your entire rig and kind of find every individual CV and gate. You can just leave them patched and just plug in the one HDMI cable and you're good to go. So let's see here. What's going on? Magical. Thanks, James. people don't usually call my sounds magical. It tends to be more like rockin', whatever. So maybe it's the Digitone 2. Maybe it's going to make me magical. Maybe it's a magical device. You're welcome. Let's see. Oh, that's wild, polymetric sequencing like that. Yeah, it's something that I've done for a long time. I did a video like 3 years ago, I think, where I was sequencing, back when I used to have an analog 4, I did a video about how to write bass lines, and I was sequencing the analog 4 from another sequencer. And so that way you could have two different sequences going in, and you could play one or the other or both and have a bunch of different sequences that played off of each other. And that's kind of like what I'm doing here. So like right now, it's funny because I was doing something that was kind of complex, but if I was to go in and make it really simple, so let's just put like 2 notes and then make the length, I don't know, 9, just to make it interesting. And then if I go over to here and I just put 2, or let's just put 1 note, then I can play those 2 together. So that you see that's triggering both. But now if I was to unmute this one, and then I can go in and then you can go back into this sequence and say, so now if I mute both of these, it's only going to play these. And if I unmute 4, it's going to play both tracks from here, but only 4 from here. Now if I unmute 12, now that's giving me both. So you can hear, this is basically how the sequencers on the Moog Labyrinth work, where you've got 2 different sequencers that are going in 2 different pattern lengths or times. And so you can set them up like this to kind of play off of each other and to go in and out of sounds like that, right? So I changed up the notes in here, but you don't necessarily have to do that. You can just make it so that it's playing the same note, so it'll just change up a rhythm. So for example, if you were doing this on drum tracks, you could have this be, actually, let's try that. While we're here, I mean, I'm not going anywhere. Let's come up with something that sounds like percussion. Yeah, toms, there we go. So now we've got a tom there. And let's do something over here. High tom, okay. Oh, that's too high. Pitch this back down. This one. Okay, so now we have 2 different drum sounds that we can sequence from there. So I'm going to take both of those off so it's only these that's playing. That's losing my sequencer here because my battery's gonna die. Hold on one sec. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna pitch this down just a little bit. Okay, so that's just coming from here, playing those two separate ones. But now if I was to go in and unmute, so again, I have on track 4, I have a separate sequence. So now if I was to go in and unmute 4, and now if I unmute 12, that'll add in that layer again as well. So you can see, you can come up with some really cool rhythms. Now, right now, that was just with kind of some random toms, but if you mess around with this and you dial this in a little bit, then you could have, let's say, a snare or a tom paired with a kick, and then change up the different ways that you're using the layers and that you're using the two sequencers. So you can have multiple layers being controlled by multiple sequencers with sometimes parameter locks or effects or things like that. So again, going into this, if I was to go into these tracks, so just going into 4 and going into the effects, I can add some delay. So you hear, you have this pattern controlling those. Now if I mute this, yeah, so now this pattern isn't triggering these. This is just the internal pattern on 4 that's triggering those two. But then if I unmute this, and again, I can decide which of these I want to play. again, you can see all the different ways that you can mix and match that. So tons of ways to explore in this, which I think is pretty fun. And again, we're just using one track from here and 2 tracks layered here. You have the ability to send, I mean, I could send, I'm only sending to 4. I could send to multiple tracks, different patterns, have them layered in different ways, and then being able to adjust and kind of morph between the different patterns to create the things that I want. Then what's cool is that you've got kits in here. So you could save that as a kit. You could save it with a pattern. Then you've got that pattern that you can control with this. You can save patterns here, and then you can mix and match them to create all sorts of different sounds. I can anticipate that it would get crazy and ugly really quick. So I would say, just because you have all of that capability doesn't mean you necessarily want to use it all together, but to being able to find those things that layer correctly, you could have a sound and say, man, I love this piano sound, but I wish I could layer it with, you know, a string section. Okay, cool. Now you can layer those together and you can control that internally, or you can control that from an external sequencer. And then you can morph between them using the volume and then add individual controls to each individual layer. So pretty freaking crazy what you can do with that now. So that's new. Let's see. New engines are analog-ish. Yes, they are. The filters do sound good. And because you have so many different filter types now, it's funny though, they gave you all these filter types. I tend to always default back to the legacy one because I like having high pass or low pass as my kind of performative filter. But I do use the comb filter quite a bit. And that's something that, you know, with what we're doing right now, if you were to change this up to the comb filter, it's pretty crazy how crazy you can get with it really quick. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. Let's see what else we have here. Yeah, adding parameter locks would get even wilder, totally. This is with no parameter locking. Like all of those things can be parameter locked to each one of those steps. So like, for example, if you used, if you wanted to parameter lock effects and have effects just hit on certain ones, so have a delay just hit on the last one and have it delay out over while the rest of it played, and then kind of re-delay as it hit the last note each time, you could do that. It'd be pretty cool. Let's see. Also really great master overdrive on the mixer to glue it all together if you want. Yeah, yes, definitely. Having that master overdrive. Digitone 2 is definitely warmer sounding than the OG. I think so too. Personally, I think it's somewhere in the middle. Sounds very digital, but its own sound. There's no machine that sounds like it. I think so too. I think that yes, it has its own sound. And I'm one of those people that I think every synth has its own sound. What I love with the Digitone and now with the 2 is that it is, it's a way to use and manipulate FM that makes FM very usable and playable beyond presets. You know, if you go to something else, like obviously the worst was like the DX7 and that era. But then if you go to something like an Op6, for example, like the Roland Op6, or sorry, Korg Op6, it's easier than the DX7, but not as easy as the Digitone. Because again, very easy to make it sound bad and a little bit less easy to make it sound good. So, so yeah, I think that's really the strength of this. And on top of that, I think another strength of this is that you've got FM synthesis engines with subtractive synthesis layered over the top. So you've got the FM synth engines, but then you've also got filters to do subtractive synthesis, and you've got, you know, effects and overdrives and things that you would normally use with subtractive synthesis to be able to make it much more approachable while still having some really cool, unique FM synthesis capabilities. Something we haven't even gone into too is that there's 3 LFOs per track, so per sound. And you can use those LFOs to control the FM synthesis engines. So you can be morphing the original sound while you're then affecting it in a subtractive synthesis way, while you're layering with other layers. And it, like, this is a crazy deep machine. Like, I would say it's way deeper than any of the other machines. So yeah, I'm impressed. I didn't think I was going to be this impressed. I thought it was going to sound cool and metallic, which as a techno guy, I like cool and metallic. But yeah, there's a lot more that this can do that I was not expecting it to be able to do. So let's see. What else do we have here? Great having synthesis with subtractive filters. Oh yeah, there we go. Comb filter is really cool for sound design, offers a different approach, but of course low pass, high pass are standard classic tools. Totally. Yeah, and especially as kind of like performance tools, I think that the low pass, high pass are great. Because I have this running through my modular mixer and it's then going through the Oxymeta, I have things like, I have the ability to use that as my low pass, high pass to be able to use those as kind of performance effects. So less important for me, but because of the way I would use it, but they're definitely super cool and super usable. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. Can then go to, so this is track 6. So now if I was to go into my setup mode and into track layering, I can have 6 now, which is playing from here, control anything else. So what do we want to control? I don't know, let's pick a random one, 15. Okay, so now let's see how deep and messed up and weird we can get with this. So if we have 6 controlling 4, then if we go into 4, into track layering, and have 4 control 12, okay, so it doesn't work in multiple layers internally in the machine. So 6 can control 4, but 4 is not then in turn controlling 12. However, when I was controlling 4 from here, it was controlling 12. So you can't do the layering internally to go 2 separate layers, but you can if you're using it externally. So I can have this control 4 and then have 4 control 12, but I can't have 6 control 4 and 4 control 12. So interesting to see what it can do internally and what it needs an external synth or an external sequencer to be able to control. So interesting. That's interesting. So it can actually. So now what's going on right now, this is controlling track 6. So the Oxy is controlling track 6. Track 6 is layered with 4 and 15. And when I unmute 4, it then is playing the sequence also that's on 4, and it's controlling 12. It's layering with 12. So you can control layers internally. If I was to mute this and then go back and play this. So track 6. Track 6 now has a sequence on it. Let's go back to 4. Okay, so now track 6 is layering with 4, like it was before. And with layer with 15, because I have those set up to layer. So those are all layering together. Now 4, if I was to unmute 12, okay, it's not then in turn controlling 12, but if 4 has a sequence on it, now that's controlling 12 and 4. So different versions and different ways that you can get this set up, allowing it to control different things by layering different tracks with other tracks, and then in turn controlling them with external synthesizer or external sequencers if you want to, or just going with a pretty standard standard layering, but it's actually not very standard. So it's very unique. I've never seen something that can do this. And it's interesting because Jean-Francois from Electron we were talking about the possibility of being able to do this at some time. So now it's amazing that it is out and actually happening. Let's see. If you have questions, pop them into the chat. I'm happy to answer whatever questions you have. So let's see here. Yeah, definitely underestimated it. Me too. Like, I underestimated it until I saw EasyBot's live stream about it. And then I was like, oh, that sounds much more interesting sound-wise than I thought it was going to sound. So that's what made me want to get it and give it a try. And I expected to be able to be like, oh yeah, cool sound design. This is neat. I like this more than I thought I was going to. But now with this track layering thing, that's just an entirely new level of sound design possibilities. I mean, honestly, I've got over there in the corner, I have a Polybrute. The cool thing about the Polybrute is being able to have two different sounds on one sound and to be able to morph between those. Now I could have 16 different sounds in one sound and morph between them. So that's pretty crazy. You know, like being able to do what that can do as its kind of signature key thing. Now being able to do that within the Digitone 2 is pretty bonkers. Let's see, I'm just gonna refresh here because I've had it happen before that I did not see what was in the chat because I didn't refresh. So let's see. Cool. Hey, Ruffian, what's going on? Greetings from Rotterdam. Man, it's late at night for you, isn't it? So Ruffian played the same show that I played at the Amsterdam Dance event at ADE. He played a live set as well, which was pretty awesome. And got some cool videos. So some of the videos I've posted were actually from them. So that was very cool. So thanks very much. Any other questions about what this can do? Because obviously we're just experimenting here. We're finding new stuff that this can do. So if you've got other questions about capabilities of the Digitone 2, pop them in the chat. Or anything about the rest of the setup here, the new mixing setup that I've got going on, or the way I'm performing live with this, throw those in the chat, and I'm happy to answer whatever questions you might have. Otherwise, if not, if there's no other questions, I may call it a live stream at 2 hours and spend some time playing around with this so I can see if I can find some new things that that we haven't found yet. I mean, obviously this was a huge one, and we'll mess around with this a bit more and see if there's other ways that we can come up with some cool different ways to use that. But already this track layering thing is pretty crazy, and the capabilities of it are pretty crazy. So yeah, so if you're thinking about getting the Digitone 2 or a Digitac 2 or any of these machines, please use the affiliate links that are down below here. There's one for Zounds if you want to do it in payments. There's one for Perfect Circuit if you want to do more modular stuff. You can go ahead and do those. They definitely help a lot, and you don't pay anything extra, so do that. And the big thing for me today that I wanted to make sure everybody knew about was my courses, whether it's the live performance course or the new production course that's going to be starting in December, or the video only course. All of those are on sale right now for Black Friday, and there's a Black Friday countdown sale. So right now, the first 5 people that sign up for any of them get 50% off. Then the discount goes to 40% off for the next 5 people, and then 30% off for the next 5 people, and so on until the discounts are all gone. So if you'd like to get one of the courses, now's the time to sign up. And the signups are open. For the first time, I opened it up more in advance. I normally only do 1 month in advance, but now with this, I've opened it for December, January, and February. So you can get the discount off of any of those courses. So if you're thinking, you know, I don't think I'm going to be able to do it until February, that's cool. Sign up now and you'll get the discount now for the February course or the January course, or however you want to do it. So definitely jump in. I would love to get as many of you the discounts as possible. So go to circlelive.com/courses, and then you just enter in Black Friday at checkout, and that will automatically take the percentage off whatever it's at the moment. So for right now, I think it's still 50% unless somebody signed up during this stream, in which case it will have dropped down to 40% for the next 5. So jump in and get those done as quickly as you can so you can get the biggest discount possible. So anyway, thanks for a great stream. So excited to see what everyone makes with this box. Yeah, me too. Like, this opens up a crazy amount of doors that I never thought we were going to be doing with this stuff. So yeah, now I'm going to see what I can do with it, with using it in a bunch of different ways, maybe setting it up in different ways for live performance that will make it just that much more fun. So anyway, sign up for the courses if you'd like. I've got a Patreon as well, Circle Live. There's you can go to my website, circlelive.com, and that's where you can get the courses. Book me for a show if you want to, or you can sign up for one-on-one lessons. We do those as well. Or you can just reach out to me on Messenger. Instagram usually works the best. But yeah, love to hear from you, and hope to see you signing up for some of the courses. And don't forget to use the affiliate links. Thanks very much, and hope you guys enjoy playing around with the Digitone 2. I know I will. I'm kind of excited to jam around with it a bit. So thanks everybody for hanging out. Thanks for coming out for this and for sticking it out to the end. I appreciate it, and hope to see you at the next one. Take care, everybody.